Hello everyone and welcome back to another video where today I want to talk about something that's kind of gone onto the periphery of my mind following the end of the reality war, and that is the war between the land and the sea. We got a new trailer for it at the end of the reality war, and I actually said at the end of my video on Billy Piper being the Doctor that, man, I'm just so sad. On the positive side, at least War Between looks good. And it does, and I want to break down the trailer as well as some of the other new bits of news and information we have about this show, and kind of tell you why I actually think this looks pretty good, and arguably could be a better direction to take the show moving forward, presuming the show does continue beyond what we just saw. But before we get into it, do me a teeny little favour and click that subscribe button if you're new. That'd be greatly appreciated. We are trying to get 30,000 subscribers, and we're currently on 28,400, so any support would be greatly appreciated. Now we can get to that goal, but with that said, let's dive right in. So obviously, because I'm late to this, I'm assuming that most of you have seen the trailer already, but I've got it up here anyway, and I'm going to be pausing as we move along, so let's just dive right in.
The tides have drawn us together.
So, okay, immediately I have things to say. So, first of all, we have what looks to be a kind of research team kind of investigating what we assume to be at this point Sea Devils at the very least. And obviously we've got Russell Tovey's character here, who I think they call Barclay. He's like our main guy, and he seems to fall in love with either a sea devil or sea serpent or whatever they are in this show. And I really like this, just initially. It gives very kind of Jurassic Park kind of vibes of them kind of, you know, finding the dinosaurs on the island and then them kind of just being like in shock of them, and obviously that feels kind of similar here. Obviously I'm assuming Unit are involved here as well, but obviously Barclay seems to be an outsider to that, so that's very interesting. And then we get our first shot of what we presume to be a Sea Devil. Now, this is quite the drastic departure from the original Sea Devil design. First seen in, obviously, the original Sea Devil story, most recently seen and readapted for Legend of the Sea Devils. And at first, I wasn't sure about this design. I said that on a video I did with Crystal D. I said, the Sea Devil design is questionable, but we'll see how it goes. But actually, having thought about it more, I actually think it looks kind of cool. No, it doesn't look as faithful or as accurate to the original Sea Devil designs as the Legend of the Sea Devils variants do. However, I would point out that I think it would be difficult to do a big, serious 5-episode drama involving a lot of conflict and emotion with this mask. I think it would just be a bit difficult to try and sell. I love that original design, but let's be honest, it's a little bit goofy looking, and the tone of this looks a lot more serious. So I get them trying to change it a little bit for that, and I actually think, from what we see here, this is actually a pretty cool design. I have other kind of thoughts on the other main Sea Devil or creature that we see, played by Gugu Mbatha-Raw, so I'll sort of save my thoughts for her, but let's carry on.
We could make a difference, you and I.
Obviously, again, very Jurassic Park, they're on like sort of an island there.
And the conflict between our species.
So courtroom, conflict between the species, Unit is involved and Kate is involved.
Before it's too late.
And yeah, so this is the other one that I'm noticing. So obviously this is Gugu Mbatha-Raw's character, who is either, you know, a Sea Devil or some type of sea serpent. I've seen some speculation that maybe this is actually a different strand of like the Sea Devil species, and that would be quite interesting. I wonder as well if that's what these guys look like behind the mask. So the earlier Sea Devil face that we saw isn't actually their real face, but is like a kind of mask thing. Sort of similar to what they did with the Silurians in Series 5, where the grey thing is like the mask, and then underneath they look more humanoid looking. I don't know whether that would be the best idea, but I suppose if you want to have them emote, especially with this that seems to have a kind of romantic tinge to it, I do understand going for a more humanoid looking face. As I said, love that original design, but I think this would have been a hard sell for a serious, semi-romantic drama. Obviously we've got Barclay there being escorted out by Unit, the police and the press are all questioning him.
I know why you chose me. for any of this.
So yeah, you can kind of see a little bit of kind of lovers tension kind of going on here. So that's very interesting, and I think that's probably going to be the linchpin of the series. Very kind of Shape of Water, I think.
You have to stop!
I really like Kate's performance being very abrasive, very abrupt, very violent here. It definitely seems like we're carrying on Kate as this more sort of authoritative, done with everything figure, which I actually really liked as a direction for her in Lucky Day, and I'm glad to see that that's being expanded upon. Obviously, we've got a shot of what seems to be a bunch of debris and kind of pollution on the ground. Maybe that's the Sea Devils kind of essentially throwing the plastic back at the humans and basically saying, you dumped this on us, so now you see how you like it, kind of thing. One thing I'll say about this trailer as well is that it looks incredibly kind of prestige, is the only real way I can put it. It looks like a proper drama, which, look, I don't want to say that Doctor Who isn't a proper drama, of course it is, but the latest version of Doctor Who, for better or for worse, does have a slight MCU flavour to it, which for some of you might be a good thing, for others might be a bad thing. For me, I don't mind it too much. However, looking at this, and kind of looking at it in contrast to the much more kind of clean, clear-cut Doctor Who that we've had in the last couple of years, part of me can't help but feel that this is the sort of tone I was wanting from Russell T Davies' return, as opposed to Russell T Davies 2 Doctor Who, which is a lot lighter and a lot more, as I said, kind of MCU and quippy and very kind of action-orientated. Obviously, I think this is going to have action as well, but it's more gritty, if that makes any sense.
Will you trust me, Barclay?
So you've got Unit here in the... Okay, there's quite a few shots I want to dissect here. So you've got Unit here in these kind of wetsuits. They kind of remind me of the Doctor's spacesuit, but I'm assuming they're more like wetsuits to go and meet with the Sea Devils here. And then we get this really cool shot of a more full body shot of one of the Sea Devils. And again, I have to say, the design is growing on me. I think because it's so different, it did take me a second. But once I saw it in context with this trailer, it certainly did begin to make more sense. It's interesting too that with the exception of the Gugu Sea Devil, we've only really seen them concealed in kind of darkness. And I wonder if that's going to be kind of a thing either narratively, that they only come out in the night, or whether it'll just be more of a stylistic choice to mainly show them in the night so that, you know, the prosthetics kind of look more kind of real than perhaps they would in full light, if that makes any sense. Like, almost keeping them more concealed makes them seem more threatening, I don't know. We've got a bunch of stuff here, including like a bunch of what I can only assume is their eggs. And I think something else that's really interesting about this as well is like the colour palette of it. The colour palette of it is way darker than current Doctor Who as well. And yeah, I mean, I think Russell said in an interview, I can't remember where, that this would be darker. It wouldn't be Torchwood levels of dark, but it's a bit more mature. And I think that's a good thing. And as I said, I think that was kind of my hope when Russell was initially coming back. And it seems like he's just put that into a spin-off instead, which is fine. But I wonder if the reception to this is perhaps a little bit better than it is for Doctor Who. Maybe that will be the direction moving forward, assuming, you know, everything does continue. And then there you go, the war between the land and the sea. Oh wow, the don't forget to click below is gone, because Shooty is gone. Man, still not over it. We've got obviously a couple of promo pictures here as well, one of which has Barclay in the kind of courtroom, the other has Gugu kind of in full Sea Devil costuming and stuff like that. Let's read what the synopsis says. Get your first look at the next chapter in the Whoniverse. Following on from the epic Season 2 finale, viewers were treated to a first look at the next chapter in the Whoniverse, the war between land and sea, and new character imagery has been released of Russell Tovey as Barclay and Gugu Mbatha Raw as Salt. Oh, interesting. I didn't know her name was Salt. I've just been calling her Gugu Mbatha Raw's character. The 5-part series also previously announced cast members Gemma Graham, Alexander Devereaux, Ruth Medley, Colin McFarlane, Adrian Lucas, Patrick Ballardi, Francesca Corney, My Mac, and Vincent Franklin. Additional guest stars who can be spotted in the trailer are Willard Hammond, Easton Arwell, Hannah Donaldson, Manpreet Bachu, and Anne Akinjurin. If I butcher any of those names, I'm very, very sorry. When a fearsome ancient species emerges from the ocean, dramatically revealing themselves to humanity, an international crisis is triggered. With the entire population at risk, units step into action as the land and sea wage war. I like it as a synopsis. Russell T Davies, showrunner, writer, and executive producer, says, "The excitement is beginning to build as the universe expands. I can't wait for people to see this magnificent cast in such a powerful, vital, epic story. Look to the seas." I actually think this looks really good. You guys will know, if you've been following this channel for a fair length of time, that I was never particularly excited for the War Between the Land and the Sea, for a couple of reasons. Mainly, I just thought the concept sounded a bit bizarre on paper, and a bit kind of like, really? That's your first spin-off? That's what you're going with? A Sea Devil versus a unit spin-off? Okay, sure. But actually having seen the trailer and seeing kind of the concept for it, I can actually see it kind of working. And I mean, tonally, it seems to be doing all the right things. I think it visually looks very good, if not a little bit better than some of recent Doctor Who has. And I think that's partially, as I said, because they've focused it in more on like more real locations and made it more down to earth, and, you know, taking itself a bit more seriously, and, you know, the colour palette is a bit more reserved as well. But adding on to that, we do actually have the composer for this. This was announced a couple of days ago as well. Lorne Balfe will be the composer for The War Between Land and Sea. Now, if you don't know that name, Lorne Balfe is an incredibly prolific musical composer, mainly known for doing things like the Mission Impossible films. He also recently did Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul. He also did the music for Megamind. Like, this guy has a very long and illustrious career, and I am very excited to hear his musical talent on this. Like, he is a very prolific film and television music composer, so I'm very interested to see what he does with this. And I will say, because I believe Murray Gold did say that once Ncuti left, he would also leave, I would not be opposed to Lorne Balfe as a successor. I think he would be a more than worthy successor to Murray Gold. Obviously, being able to do the big bombast that kind of defines a lot of Russell T Davies's kind of stories, but also being able to kind of inject his own flavour into it. So, the more I'm hearing about the show, honestly, the more optimistic I am for it. Initially, I was kind of like, it just seems like a bit of a weird choice. I don't really know whether I'm going to be that excited, but actually, having watched this and looked over all the material, I'm fairly excited for it. One thing I will say for certain, though, is that my criticism for that title has most certainly not changed. The War Between the Land and the Sea is such a wordy, convoluted title, and it's going to make it a nightmare for SEO and search terms and merchandise and stuff like that. Things like Torchwood, you know, they're tight, they're catchy. Even the Sarah Jane Adventures, which is a bit longer, is quite simple. The War Between the Land and the Sea, I think it's just a bit too wordy, in my opinion, but there we are. That's my thought on the title. I think it's going to be a nightmare for like videos like this where I'm talking about the show, and if I say, I'm going to do The War Between Land and Sea Episode 1 review, that's a very long title without anything else. So, yeah, that's my thought on that. But let me know in the comments below what you guys think. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you later.